a performance which we expect from Man City now. 1 foot in the quarterfinals, as the gents were saying just then, well on course to defend the Champions League trophy, which they lifted for the first time in June. Now, despite being away from home, City asserted their authority, 79 of possession, 23 more shots than Copenhagen, who just had 1 shot on target in what was their first game in 2 months after their winter break. I think when you consider 830 passes in total, it just shows how dominant Man City were on their way to the 11th consecutive win in all competitions. Pep Guardiola described it as perfect, albeit with the injuries in mind as well. They remain unbeaten in Europe in 21 matches, and they created history last night, became the first side in Champions League history to score 3 or more goals in 7 successive matches. We can see the matches they've done them in here. Third teams do so in successive away games too. So in the group stage against Red Star, RB Leipzig and Young Boys, and last night against Copenhagen as well. And all of these 7 matches, they scored exactly 3 goals. So if they go on and do exactly the same for the rest of this competition, they'll all but sue up the Champions League for the back-to-back years. Right, for all the positivity though, victory did come at a bit of a cost with injuries to Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva. This is what Pep Guardiola had to say about Grealish. I didn't speak with the doctor, but it looked like muscular attack, but it's a pity because the last few days he was in a smooth training session. Much better. He was playing really good. Really good. He helped us to play in the right tempo against the teams, and especially in the first leg in the finals. You cannot just play so slow, but you cannot play so fast in the teams like Incredible Organised. Had to find the right moment. Right tempo, and Jack helped us a lot. Hopefully he can recover quick. I don't want to see the players injured when they try to do it, of course. That's part of the business. How happy was Jack before the game to find out he was starting tonight? Yeah, of course I was happy. I never, in my career, today I made my 900 games as a manager. I never found a player when I say you play. I'm happy, never. I think I will not be happy in my future 900 games. Yeah, a real shame for Grealish himself, but how concerning is it, particularly given it was his first start in 6? Yeah, it's a real blow for him. We saw his frustration as he was down on the turf. He knew straight away he wasn't going to be able to play on. We heard Pep saying about the rhythm that he'd found in training this past week, and also he'd known that he was going to be playing a big role in this big game for Man City as well. Grealish, because it's only been 7 Premier League starts this season. He's gone from playing in 2/3 of their Premier League games last season, starting those matches and being a real kid figure as they went and won the titles last season, to really being on the periphery this year, because I think Doku, he's gone from playing in 2/3 of their Premier League games last season, starting those matches and being a real kid figure as they went and won the titles last season, to really being on the periphery this year, because I think Doku has come in and he's just gone to a level that I don't think Man City were really even expecting him to do in this first season.
He's a very different player to what we normally see from Pep Guardiola players, in terms of just dribbling at his opposite number all the time. We think of Pep Guardiola teams as pass, but Doku just gives them that different sort of weapon. And yeah, it's a real blow for Grealish, because this was a good chance for him to sort of stake his claim for a return to the team, but he looks like he might be on the sidelines for a little while now. Well, it was really another impressive performance from surprise, Kevin De Bruyne. Wasn't it, Nolan? He's just been so impressive since making his return of injury at the start of the year. Last night's opener meant 8 goal contributions since January the 7th when he came back. 2 goals, 6 assists, and whilst perhaps he's better known for his creativity than his finishing, yesterday's goal put him in elite company. He's now scored 10 goals in the knockout stage of the Champions League, if you go back to the 2019-2020 season, joining Karim Benzema, Robert Lewandowski and his Man City teammate Erling Haaland on the list. I'm sure he's already in your fancy team again, Noel? He's going to look to add to this tally when City progress. You'd think now into the last 16. There's been plenty of talk around another Man City treble. And you can see why when you consider what Kevin De Bruyne is doing alongside the rest of his Man City teammates. Yes, and on that, actually, guys, do they need De Bruyne to stand any chance of completely winning a treble, or does it not really matter when you just look at their squad? Yeah, I mean, he is such an outstanding player, and it feels like, having spent so long out of the team, It feels like he's never been away. He's come back and been able to hit the ground running, which is phenomenal, really.
And a player who, at 32, some people might be thinking maybe he's coming towards the end of that peak, but is showing no signs really of that happening. And, as we saw from James there, it's not just his contribution throughout the season, it's his contribution in big games. He always comes to the table in big games for Manchester City, and you see there with 10 knockout goals in the Champions League, the only midfielder on that list. His importance is absolutely vital for City, but then, City won the Champions League in the final when De Bruyne was substituted off after about half an hour. So they are able to adapt when they don't have big players. They won the title without a striker, so to say that it's impossible for City to win anything without De Bruyne is wrong. They can be such a good player. Yeah, how do you assess the chances of a treble? And did last night's result go a long way to helping that in terms of you've got that second leg with Copenhagen sandwich between huge games, rival Manchester United. Yeah, they might not be up there, but they're still rivals, and Liverpool, of course, as well. Another huge game in terms of squad rotation. Yeah, that's the point we made.
It's just if you can give yourself a bit of a buffer in these games and make that progress a little bit easier than it might necessarily be otherwise. It just gives you a bit of wriggle room elsewhere in the season as well. But I think what they achieved last year was just incredible, and to do it again. Pep Guardiola has spoken about how hard that would be and almost how impossible that would be. They're favourites in each competition, really. They're favourites to go and win the PremierLeague. Luton away in the FACup. And so we're saying now, we think they've probably got one foot in the quarter-finals of ChampionsLeague. Of course it depends who you draw in the next round of these cup competitions. But City are the team to be feared, and mentioned De Bruyne there. The other thing he does is unlocks Haaland. Really, I think even more so. We see since the start of last season, no player has assisted one player for another player more than De Bruyne has for Haaland. And that combination together, it just strikes fear, I think, into opposition teams. I don't think we should be getting ahead of ourselves with talk of a treble. It's so hard to do, that's why it's not been done very often. And particularly when you get to the latter stages of European football. It's almost sometimes can come down to the flip of a coin. Tiny margins if one team can create a bit of chaos against Pep Guardiola. We've seen them before, where sometimes they can be a little bit fragile thinking back to the game against Real Madrid in the Bernabeu, when they got knocked out. Quick goals in quick succession sometimes. You can create that sort of atmosphere against Manchester City. It's so hard to win a treble. It's so hard to win knockout games. It's tiny margins. So it isn't a surprise that they're favourites for these competitions, but to do it is going to be unbelievable. One thing I'll just quickly say is obviously you want a clean bit of health as well. And they've been pretty fortunate in the last couple of weeks in terms of fitness. We saw Grealish go off last night. Also Bernardo Silva. He's on course for his best ever goal involving